Liberty Lane Films presents Aging with Pride 2025, our second annual Pride event centering the lives, stories, and experiences of our LGBTQ+ elders. This year's conversation bridges the past and present, exploring the parallels between the early days of queer liberation and the challenges we face in today's political climate. Filmmaker J. moderates a candid and deeply moving conversation with therapist and longtime activist Celia Brown on grief, resilience, and the power of showing up.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. This is the second annual Aging with Pride, where the goal is to center our LGBT seniors and apply the lessons that they learn to inform how we show up in our lives today. As many of you know, I've been working on a feature-length documentary, and as a part of that process, I've been interviewing a lot of our elder LGBTQ folks, including my lovely guest here, who I'll introduce in a second. And one of the things that I have become really, really aware of, certainly as I entered my 40s, was that I didn't have a lot of teachers. I came out 25 years ago, but I wasn't, raised in a culture where I had, gay male teachers. And we all know that part of the reason that is that many of them died. And so it's really been an honor to be able to put this event together and to welcome you all and to work on that other project. And my name is Jay. I'm a filmmaker. I'm gay, if I didn't, and I'm single. No, and only partially available. But yeah. But I'm a Sagittarian, maybe Saturn rising. I don't know what any of that means. I don't believe in it. So, I don't know how stars, in a distant galaxy have any impact on my life here on Earth. So I'd like to introduce my friend, my kind of co-host and panelist, Celia Brown. Celia.
Hi. Hello, how are you?
Celia was referred to me by someone when we were in the early planning stages for this documentary, who are some fun old lesbians with very loud opinions. And her name, no, seriously, because what I wanted was a contrarian point of view as I tell this story of this organization, which is the documentary is about the Castro Country Club. And in its early days, it was, largely gay men. It was in the Castros, so it was the Castro clone, so cis, white, short, jeans, the whole 9 yards. And so, gay spaces historically have not been welcoming to all. I feel like a lot of that changed during the AIDS crisis, and I'm really glad that it has. We'll get into some of these topics here, but Celia, gay...
I was the door dyke.
Yeah, literally. You're still a door dyke. But one of the things that has been really beautiful for me as a filmmaker has been to sit with people and allow them space to share their truth and their stories. And through the course of that process, I've really gotten to know and appreciate Celia. And, the film will be coming out next summer. We're hoping for a Frameline premiere, so I don't see any reason why that wouldn't happen. And she also joined as an associate producer, and I'm very grateful for your support. So what we'll do here is we'll hold, I'm gonna, keep her under the director's fire, and I hope some of you come up with some questions. We're gonna open it up for a question and answer session. No topic is off limits. And so without further ado, well, first, Celia, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. And thank you all for coming. And it's a real honor. Now my dog, who's the best behaved animal alive is acting up. Um, and now he's not. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and I came out here to San Francisco in 1977. I like to say that I grew up in Richmond, but that I lived in D.C. for about 8 years. I'd like to say I grew up there also. I met the first gay people. I mean, I saw some people look suspicious, but and they were two men, and they were lovely. And my lover at the time was out of town, and they sort of thought of us as two straight girls, and we thought they were two gay boys. And so they came out to me. I came out to them. It was unbelievably cathartic. I had gotten in trouble in college for falling in love with my best friend, and there's much trauma about that, and we don't need to go into it, but it was, and that was the woman I was with. And he could just, is the door closed? Oh, then he's fine. If it doesn't bother anybody, he's fine.
Introduce yourself to Wilson if you see him.
Yeah, this is Wilson. Anyway, and it was because I would look up homosexual and lesbian. Those were the two words in any book I saw.
I was going to say, how did you look that up before the internet?
We had books, and they were interesting. They had paper. You can throw them at people, which makes it better. Card catalogs are the coolest thing in the world. Yes,
And literally,
and the index in the back.
Yeah, that is a conspiracy of the lesbian librarian establishment, and
Librarians rock. You have to admit.
no. I honestly, it's wild that librarians of all people are under attack right now. So you came out, if I recall, in 1969.
I did. I know.
The year of Stonewall. I'm curious. What did finding community look like in 1969, 1970? What was the experience of coming out back then at that time?
There was only community. Younger folks who are enduring an enormous amount of stressors and things now. What often they don't understand is there are visible allies. There were no visible allies. You looked to find queers, but you didn't call them queers because that was a derogatory thing that everybody called us. And so you went to bars, and those bars could be rated or not, and sometimes they would not actually come in. They would just lurk outside, and wait and then pull people over. And it was, and it was the most freeing thing for anybody who remembers coming out. I mean, just this, oh my God, I'm not the only one. And also, I was a kind of androgynous. I didn't fit in any kind of stereotype. And I just didn't know. And then there was Danny and Jean. I read everything they had that was gay. I read Christopher Street After Dark. That was a really good glossy magazine out of New York. I read gay porn because it was there. I read The Advocate, which was a broadsheet at the time, and there was a thing on the front page of the cover. Is there a gay bar in Slopjar, West Virginia? There is, or was, in the 70s. And there was a bar called the Pier 9, and it was in the southeast. Was actually near the Marine base. Yeah, the Marine barracks. Yeah, Helium Hills, and it was this great big vast room, and you couldn't walk with a drink in Washington D.C. at the time because the only people who might want to walk with a drink, because only single men or couples went to bars back then. And so the only people who would have need to walk around and meet people would be queers. And so there was a law against that. So on every table there was a big sign that had a number, and there were telephones. And by the end of the night, the entire room was connected. Did you go there? You know the pier? Oh, God. I'm going to cry. I really am. At the end of the night, it was connected. Everybody was connected. I mean, literally, it's this huge room, and everyone was connected. So if I saw you and I thought you were cute, I would tell the waiter, and a drink would be sent over. And this is, yeah. It worked. It was lovely. Yeah, it was really cool. And then you meet the people around you, and then people would come over because they could walk over, not with their drink. God, I met the hottest woman there. She was from San Francisco, and I was like 22, and I looked 14. And believe it or not, I was really cute and hot. I didn't know that then. And I can say that now because I didn't think it. And then I see these pictures, and I thought, how the fuck did I think I wasn't a And so I'm there with my friend Jeffrey, because it's 10-cent beer night, because that's how old we are. And there was and these people, these two couples came in, like men and women, and this woman was stunning. And we were as stoned as you could be, and we were sitting there, and Jeffrey was really shy, and all of a sudden the waiter comes over and said, drinks have been sent from, and we had seen them come in. And I was like, why are these straight people in here? God, she's gorgeous. And they've sent you drinks, and then may they join you. And I was as fucked up as I think I'd been in a long time, and I didn't know what to do. My lover was off in Europe visiting her family, and I was monogamous. And so we left, Jeffrey and I left, and we went to this other, what was the place, remember over near the barracks, there was the bar.
Are we still in Washington, D.C. in this story?
We are still in Washington, D.C. And anyway, we go there, and they follow us. They do, where are you going? They come running out. Anyway, so we're there, and she looks at me and says, I'm in town for the weekend, and I have my friend's house, and I would love to spend the weekend with you. And I said, I am going to regret this for the rest of my life. Because my lover, I have a lover, and I'm monogamous, and I have regretted it for the rest of my fucking life. Because she was not always monogamous. And so that's part of my coming out story, and I didn't know I was going to tell that.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for knowing the period.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, Washington, D.C. is my hometown. And I moved here almost 11 years ago. It's actually the second time I've lived here. And, for me, before I came out when I was 19, I didn't know. I mean, I knew that I was gay. But I really wasn't sure. And I didn't know much about San Francisco, although I used to come out here every summer with family. And but I knew that San Francisco was gay, and I knew that wherever I would be on that sexuality spectrum, that it would be okay to figure that out here. And it was on the other side of the country from family. And so for me, especially as a 19-year-old, it really was an escape. And so I'm curious for you, you moved here in 77?
Yeah, I didn't have a great relationship with my parents, and I had told them
that. Well, why San Francisco?
Well, no, I didn't move to San Francisco. I wound up in San Francisco. I told them that I was leaving the East Coast. I wasn't going anywhere. I was just leaving the East Coast. And I mean, seriously, I was leaving the East Coast. Everyone said, are you moving to San Francisco and LA? And I said, no, I would never live in LA or San Francisco. I lived in both. I had Christmas in 1976 with my parents. The next day I left. I called from Albuquerque, New Mexico to say that I had moved across, that I had left. And my mother was in the hospital with something terminal, which I diagnosed as Celia, because he calls me Celia, which is interesting because I got sober. All of my bar customers knew me as Celia. I worked at a lot of bars. I worked at the Balcony, for anybody who remembers anything about the Balcony. It was one of the sleaziest leather bars in the city. And everybody knew me as Celia, but when I got sober, I couldn't say Celia Brown, I'm an alcoholic. I mean, I could say my name is Celia and I'm an alcoholic. So I was Celia Brown. And then when I became a therapist, Celia sounds better than Celia. But what I just realized recently was how seamlessly my bar customers made that transition because many of them got sober. So they were drunk with Celia and sober with Celia. And but anyway, I called. Mother was dying, and I said, I think she's suffering from I can't control Celia, and I'm not coming back. And she was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and I didn't come back. And miraculously, she was healed. And so the next time I had Christmas in Richmond, I was 60. So that was 30 years. And I didn't see them. I saw them once in that 30 years. And so I just wound up here. Sorry.
No,
Dreamland.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of us, me at different points in my life, family wasn't safe. It wasn't safe emotionally. It wasn't safe spiritually, and for many of us, family wasn't safe physically.
Right.
And so I'm curious, what it then felt like to have the ability to source a sense of community here. And so much community is at the bars.
The only community was at the bars. I arrived, I stayed at, what was that wonderful cafe? Cafe Flora, which doesn't exist, which was the coolest place.
It recently reopened.
Oh, is it the same? Oh, nothing's the same. It doesn't matter. I'm sure it's still lovely. But it was amazing. I was a little Southern girl from Richmond, Virginia, and I'd been disowned a number of times, and here I was, and I remember going down. And I also came here during the one of the droughts, so I actually thought it was sunny all the time in San Francisco. I was just in heaven, and I came down to Castro the first time, and I saw all these lovely, handsome boys holding hands, and it just touched me. It was just something very touching about it. Within a year, the clone look had come about. Much of the affection went underground, which was a shame, I think, for the men in many ways. And then I walked down the street, and over on the other side was this funny little photography store, and this ratty sofa. And I met Harvey, and because everybody met Harvey when they first came to San Francisco, because that's what you did. I mean, you didn't know that, you just did. And I was just blown away. There weren't a lot of women. But I was okay with that because when I left my first lover, her second lover's first lover became my second lover. Okay, now I left her first. She got involved with Barbara. I somehow met Judy, and when that ended, and it was just so fucking incestuous. And it was just, and I was an only child, and I did not have social skills. And I was comfortable with men because that's who I came out with. I mean, these two men had, and there were all these older people. That was the thing that was really cool. I mean, they probably weren't all that old, but, when you're 22, they're old. And, I mean, they were probably your age, and I think, and I think you're a kid. And so, and they were just so delightful and lovely. And it was also safe because there could never be any misunderstanding. And I always wanted an older brother. And I had older brothers then. And then but going to the pier, of course, we met women. And that's where I met my first lesbian besides my girlfriend. Because I was pretty sure we thought there were others. And that's where I met my first transsexual person, which was lovely, and the community was lovely, and for those who are older, which are many, I mean, and then regular people, I don't know. It was just there was us. That's all there was. There was us. There were no allies. And there probably were allies. I mean, there were people who didn't think we were horrible, but they weren't visible. And so it was just,
when did you notice changes in the community as a response to the early experiences with HIV and AIDS?
You know, we talked a little bit the other day. We were talking about some stuff, and I was with somebody in the Lake District. She knew these two guys in the Lake District, and we'd gone and rented a place there. And I remember one day she said, I can't remember their names. I was very drunk back then most of the time, and I don't remember names well or faces, so it's not neither of those are good assets. But he was sick, and he'd gone, and it's the Lake District, so it's not like a big, medical thing, and he had pneumonia, some horrible, got this terrible pneumonia, and like he was dead in a week. And then there were just little splatterings, and I got sober. A lot of the community got sober. I almost feel like there was some divine thing that we knew we had to take care of people, and it would be easier sober. And then all these handsome men started just looking bad. And I worked in gay bars, and I worked in the sleaziest leather bar in the city. And that's... and then people started dying. People started going to the hospital. And I told Jay the other night, one of my bar customers was a lovely man. I just loved him. And he had a boyfriend, a partner, and I was there, and he looked at me, and he said, Celia, I'm doing my sex history. I've been treated 24 times for STDs. 24 times. And that was, by the way, not really an outrageous number back then. And we talked a little bit. There was a night, particularly men, because women, we didn't count, so nobody really cared if we were gay, because, nobody cared. And but for the men to come from, and there were these lovely men from all over the country, just like come here now, but in a whole different way, because you knew, but you're young in many ways. And they came here because, you come to San Francisco to be free, to be safe, to be found. And they didn't know how to be. And they didn't know how to be because the patriarchy doesn't teach men how to be. They just give you power. But then they tell you, don't do anything with it. Just fuck around with everybody, but don't do anything with it. And so you had all these guys, and they were so lovely, and so there was a lot of wanting to be free and wanting to express their feelings for other men and their sexuality, but still internalized homophobia. I think internalized homophobia still exists. You're young, you're 30, but and imagine before there was a structure in which you could just identify by clicking something or picking up a magazine. And so sex became political, but it also was wrapped in a certain self-loathing, and yet this desire to connect and not know how to connect. And because I always knew gay men, they would talk to me about stuff. And they would talk to me about dating and feelings and people and wanting things that they didn't know how to express. And so one of the things that I tell straight people is there is nothing as inspiring, and there is nothing as to watch what the gay men did in this city during AIDS. Yes, we women, lesbians were there on the forefront. But to watch men who had not the facility of a lot of the emotional resilience that women have, be there for each other, love people while they died, but more than that, have the courage to love someone again that they knew would die, because everybody was dying and everybody had AIDS. Nobody was going to live. And I remember that. Nobody was going to live, ever. And we didn't know ever we didn't know how long it would be. And it was years. I mean, it was years. And then, the background about how they didn't care but but it was also, people are freaked out by what's going on now, and if there is anything that should inspire you, it is what happened with AIDS. Because people grieved and loved and partied and had joy and cried and fell apart and held each other and said, fuck you, and demanded to be treated like human beings. And if there is anything that I could say to someone your age in this time, is that this is as horrible as it is, and the world is fucking on fire, literally often, is that it is still 100 times better, because there are so many more of us. There are so many more people who care. There's so many more people with kindness in their hearts, so many more people with compassion, so many more people with talent. I mean, we lost, my God, I look at someone like, you would have learned from some of these people. We lost the entire art world. We lost like culture. Like the straight people got fucked really bad. I mean, they dressed weird for a while. I mean, everything, you know. They didn't know what to do.
Present company included. You know, I will say this. Not only did we lose a generation of artists, we also lost a generation of art appreciators. We lost a generation of not just the culture producers, the culture keepers, but really, you know, to me, when I think of, you know, street style, it is an interpretation that is used by folks with less means to create something new out of nothing. And by losing a generation of creative people, we really lost that. And I think, oh God, what is her name? Lesbian New Yorker. Fran Lebowitz. We lost all the people who were getting laid, and all the rest of us who weren't getting laid stuck around.
Yeah.
I want to kind of talk about. Yeah, that explains a lot if you know me well. Don't unplug the wireless.
Don't unplug the wire, sweetie.
Louise,
you're on film, Wilson. Try to behave.
No, your work as a therapist, and I know that you worked with, the AIDS Project Los Angeles, and you did work in hospice. And, I think I've heard stories, and in fact, I captured one I don't know if he'll make it into the film, but I heard a story in one of my interviews where this individual could not be present for the dying of so many friends. In the beginning, he could, and then there was a point where he had to completely check out. And again, one of the things that has really become, I didn't learn this in high school, I didn't learn this in college, that it really was lesbians who came to the rescue and support, and you were a big part of that. And so I'm curious, how can we learn from the lessons, the holding space for grief, the moving through that? How can we take lessons from that, and what do you think we can do to kind of navigate grief? The grief of, I think part of, with our current administration, I felt this way. It was like grief of a future I was hoping was going to happen. And I keep finding myself living in a future that is not one that I imagined, and certainly not one I voted for.
If there's a lesson to be learned, and I think there's a lesson to be learned from AIDS and all of it, is that we are all responsible for where we are today. Now, I'm not blaming us as victims. I'm not victim blaming. We abdicate. People give up their power. Well, how often have you heard, oh, your vote doesn't count, or we don't have any power, we don't have any power, we don't have any power. If we didn't have any power, would they have to tell me I don't have any power? Like, would I have not noticed that I have no power? We have so much power. We have so much power. We destroyed Tesla stock. We destroyed Tesla stock.
Boycott Target.
I mean, we have destroyed. It is always the people. It's queers. It's people of color. It's particularly black women who have always been there. Always been there. Because what the fuck do you have to lose? I mean, really, what do you have to lose? And we get the whole, the consumerism of our society. I can't say I don't like nice things. I do. But this whole notion of just keep us distracted, keep us distracted, keep us distracted, because we can make it better. We have made it better. There is more love, there is more compassion, there's more kindness in the world than there is any of this evil and bullshit. They're terrified. They're a bunch of little boys who are good at tech, who have come up with, quite frankly, much of it is worthless stuff. No, I kid you not. Some of it is really good. I'm not like anti-tech. I'm shitty with tech, but I'm not anti-tech. But tech is not the answer to everything. That's what little boys do. Oh, and this is it, you know. Go fast and break things. Who says that? 14-year-old boys say that. This is not what adults do. And also, it's like, well, if we're going to have technology and it runs on electricity, would it be helpful to fix the grid? You know? Like we don't want regulation, like somebody's got something against clean air and water. I mean, some of us are old enough to know. Remember pictures of New York and L.A.? Of course you don't, because you couldn't see it. You know?
You know, something you said, you kind of touched on it earlier, and we've talked about it in previous discussion, is, you know, some of the frustration and backlash that we're experiencing right now is the sudden loss of a recent privilege.
Yes.
And I'm curious, you know, how do we move through that? How do we get beyond? How do folks who are maybe wallowing in the suffering of the loss of privilege, you know, which is, you know, very self-centered, how do we navigate that and like literally move the needle?
I think the needle gets moved by the fact that nobody wins in the patriarchy. Some people have a lot of power, but nobody wins. Nobody wins. I worked with Marines for a while, and I worked with new parents too. And we would have something called play morning, and we'd have all this little stuff, and they'd have little kitchens. Do you know who loves little kitchens? All little boys, because there's a lot of cool shit in there, you know, and they loved it. And so I would talk to my Marines, and I'd say, you know, the deep dark secret. Well, first of all, little boys are told that they don't have feelings. And every little boy's deep, dark secret is, I have feelings. Well, of course you have feelings. You're a human being, right? But you don't have feelings. So then you have to hide from all these feelings. But then when you hit puberty, society says, actually, you do have feelings. You can feel violent or sexual. So you fight it or fuck it. Sometimes you fight it and fuck it. And this is the model. This is the model. And this is not a win. I don't care how much power you have. This is not a win. And when you look at what came out of age, when you look at how men who kind of often put aside their sensitivity, because, you know, how many stereotypes have we had? I mean, there's so many stereotypes. Every gay guy was a twink, and everybody that come out is a twink pretty much, because, you know, it was like, oh, let's be a twink. And that's fine, you know, because that does express some people. But the reality is that the models that we've been given don't work, because the models that we model do work. There was nothing more beautiful, really, than what happened during AIDS as a result of it. Men who had destroyed themselves found themselves.
Give me an idea of what model did not work. Like, I know literally.
It's the patriarchy. The model of losing yourself in order to, and it's true. When you come out, first of all, when you're little, and then you become 13, you have puberty. And that's not fun, and the only people having less fun during adolescence are adolescents. And then you go on through life, except then if you come out, you have puberty. You're like an adolescent again. If you get sober, guess what? You get to have puberty 3 times. Because it's so much fun. And so...
I'm totally convinced.
You're not? And so... because people were real. People were real. There were no walls anymore because everybody was raw. And you look at the ways people found to comfort each other. Like, we hear Shanti, and that was one fucked up organization, but it did some good stuff, but it was a mess. But it still did good stuff. But some of the ancillary services that came out of it, one of the very best services were the ones that allowed people to keep their pets. People couldn't keep their pets. It was very rare to be able to have dogs back then. Some people had dogs, but most places wouldn't let you have a dog. So everybody had cats. Cats are really not good for people with AIDS. You can't clean the litter. And so there were people who volunteered, and what they did was go to people's house and clean litter boxes all day so that they could have their companion, so that person would not have to give up their companion. That kind of simple service, and this is why we're going to win. I know I didn't do enough, you didn't do enough. We haven't all started nonprofits to, bring down the patriarchy and fuck them all up. But we do, it's the little things. It is joy. That is what freaked them out. During AIDS, people still went out dancing. I mean, you buried somebody and went out dancing. You cleaned shit up from somebody and went out dancing. Or you went here, you went there, you made, that is the joy. I told somebody the other day, 3 things. I have Dupuytren's, so these do not look like fingers, but they actually are. They used to look like normal ones. Here's my criteria: joy, justice, and compassion. If there's not joy, justice, and compassion, you don't get to play with me. You don't get to... I'm not going where you are. I'm not going to be involved with anything else. And there's a lot of ways to have joy, justice, and compassion. But simply, he teases me, but download the 5 Calls app. You can do that, and within 10 minutes, you can make a change. There are so many simple things. And the male model is we find the leader and the one person, and we follow them, right? And then we just burn them out till they drop. This is not a sustainable model. So the model that women tend to do is the geese model. You've seen geese fly, right? Birds fly, and how they fly. In a V, right? And do you think there's one fucking goose up there the whole time? It is not. That's what I was told. This big goose gets out and starts leading everybody. No, that one gets tired and it drops back. It drops back and people take over. None of us is irreplaceable. All of us are essential. And I remember back when there were receptionists and people actually went to stores. And it didn't matter how good your company was. If the person who was the first person they saw wasn't any good and your cleaning staff wasn't good. 2 of the least exalted positions in a company held the first impression for the company. Everything has dignity. There is no job without dignity. There's no action without dignity. If you bring it sort of as like an act of service. I mean, in sobriety, they tell us to be, be of service, like get out of yourself. And also, as a therapist, I used to tell people, well, when's it going to change? I don't know. Even a microwave takes time. You just can't. You do what you can do, and then you go on and live. And when you feel yourself off center, you stop, because the model has always been go till you drop. And what does that do? It keeps you from thinking and connecting with other people. That's what it does. Because if we connect with each other, we'll find out, I think we're kind of nice, and I think they're assholes, and I think maybe we could do something, because we always have.
Something that strikes me is that we those of us who have lived in this country for any length of time, and even the message that is sold, the American ideal that is sold, is this idea of American exceptionalism and the exceptionalism of an individual. And to me, you said something the other day, that the idea of American individualism is a myth. And so I'm curious.
That's what makes us free as gay people.
Right.
Individualism.
Oh,
Self-esteem.
well, no, I don't. Okay. I think self-esteem makes us free. I don't think that.
We have empathy, but empathy is also an individual attribute.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it works best with others.
I think, how do we move through where we are right now? How do, I have, family members and people that I genuinely love who voted a different way than I did. And, there was an election in New York yesterday, and so my friend group chat has been lit up from folks who have different experiences and different viewpoints. And how do we rebuild a sense of community and togetherness, and how do we approach people that we disagree with?
I think that, okay, there's research. 1/3 of all humans are incapable of critical thinking. Now, that's a huge amount. 2/3 is bigger. But 1/3's incapable, which, it's really kind of scary. But it's not just scary, it's not, I say it's scary, and that's a glib thing to say. The human existence requires that not everyone be motivated to certain things. And you can have a really wonderful existence. Some of the most lovely people I know are people with Down syndrome. And loving, compassionate, just lovely, wonderful sense, just lovely people. And they bring something to society that is, I think, irreplaceable. If we don't, Scandinavian countries, right? They don't have the same problems we have. Now, I know that they're smaller, and I know that there's, a certain amount of, like, they all look alike, and they don't all look alike. But what they do is, none of the basic necessities of life are something you have to struggle for. No one should have to struggle for water, for clean air, for safe housing. It doesn't have to be fancy, just safe, clean housing, secure housing, healthcare. Do you know how we have a medical model predicated on the fact that I make more money if you're fucked up? I mean, rather than a medical thing. I mean, there's going to be some people with really ill health because that's just how it is. But how about a medical model where I take care of you? I mean, in many places, if you have people on your caseload who smoke, who drink too much, who carry more weight than is healthy for their body, and their doctors help them make changes, they get a bonus. Well, of course they should, because that makes it better. So when you take care of those things, those are the people who are often the MAGAs. And by the way, stop calling them names. Stop calling them names. We're no better than they are when we do that. They call me a libtard, I call them a maggot. I mean, what is that? Like that ad hominem comments, and I'm not saying I'm above that, because I'm not always, but I'd at least try not to do it online, is that's dehumanizing. That's dehumanizing. I worked with Marines. I read a book, because I read a bunch of stuff with the Marines. Do you know in combat, in World War II and in Korea and World War I probably too, and like before that, less than 15% of people aimed at the enemy. People shot above, they shot aside, they did all of these things because it is not human nature. It is not human nature to be cruel. And if we know that and we remember that, a lot of these people are, some of them, I mean, I know some people. And when you talk to some, now there are some people who are racist and are just jerks, and I mean, okay. But many of them are just not, when I moved to the South, and I'm sitting in Charleston, South Carolina with another wonder dog I had, and people would come up because I'm always reading, and, and what are you reading, we're talking, and then they'd say how lovely I was for some reason. And then they'd go, where do you go to church? I don't go to church. Well, certainly you're a Christian. I went, well, I was. Now, I try not to mention that I was Catholic because that's not Christian to the average, right, yeah.
Not below the Mason-Dixon line, that's for sure.
Right. And then I said, however, and this is true, I'm a big fan of Christ's teachings. I'm not saying it in practice very much, but I'm a big fan of them. And then they'd go, I just can't believe you're all in it and you're not Christian. And then I would go, yeah, and I'm a lesbian. Now, this is back in the aughts, 2000, right? And their little head would explode. But something else would happen, just like what Harvey said, if we all stood up at the same time. Because they liked me. They really liked me and connected with me. And that's how it changes. And we have a lot in common. They're just told we're terrible people. Just like we're told they're terrible people. Some of them are, but most of them really aren't. They're just ignorant. They just want the same things. I mean, we left, every side has left society behind. We've left so many people behind. That's all we have to do. All we have to do. Just be kind to people. Just when you go down the street, smile. I mean, I know I'm Southern and all that shit, but I remember, I'm in Los Angeles, right, the Mayfair, and I'm going through the line, and I said something to the lady in the checkout. And tears came down her eyes. And she said, this was in the afternoon, you were the first person who has spoken to me. Oh. Yeah, wow. And just and I know not every, I mean, really, there's a lot not to sell about the South. But that part of it, that just smiling, that just, because I'm sitting here and you're talking, your hair looks really good. Like it's a really cool haircut the whole way. I
love that I'm getting applause on the hair, thank you.
Yeah, but it does.
That's my mom's side of the family.
But I'm thinking,
I was really hoping my younger brother had a bald spot so that I could just take a picture.
But that just
empathy and compassion.
Yes.
Right.
And we bring justice with joy.
Yeah.
Don't forget that.
Before we turn it over for questions from the floor, you've mentioned 5 calls. I've heard this I've been on some other panels here in the city. Give everybody a quick overview of what 5 calls is and what your experience has been with it.
5 calls is an app. You put in your zip code. It tells you who your senators are, which it would probably be, you should know, but anyway. You might not know your representative because that's kind of advanced, but they, well, nobody's teaching civics, so I hated it in school, in grammar school. So anyway, so they tell you that, they show you the little picture in the phone, and then they have these different issues. And you can click on an issue, and then they will tell you why it's an issue. And then they will, for people who aren't as mouthy as I am, give you a little script.
Most of us.
And I really am an introvert. Like, I'll have to go hide in a hole now for 2 weeks. But and they give you the number, and you can choose, and then you can keep record. Talk to someone, a voicemail, whatever. I try to talk to them, and I try to be respectful, and I tell them what I like and what I don't like. But I also have started what I do, but you don't have to do what I do. But just do that, first of all. Just do that.
I'm not clear. Who is it you're calling?
My representatives.
So especially here in San Francisco, I've heard this from staff members of multiple supervisors, is that, there is a rough equation that one call equals a certain amount. And so literally just by calling and engaging, But you can really actually affect how our members vote, how people perceive a situation. One thing that I want to make clear, as somebody who I'm from Washington, D.C., and I worked in politics for a long time, is that most of the people who are answering the phone are like 18, 19, 20-year-old interns that are working 80, 90 hours a week for next to nothing. And so I think it's important as we approach that, and you and I have discussed this, is to do it with a measure of grace and kindness. And you can be like Celia and literally just be, I'm calling you again today, speaker so-and-so. Yeah. And you end up developing, even if it's just over the phone, a relationship.
Yeah, and I've developed a rapport. We don't have time to go into that, but I'll chat with anybody about it at another time. Okay, here's the things. Nobody listens. Who did you tell? Who'd you tell? Nobody listens. Well, but I like what my person's doing. I have to call them too. Well, how the fuck do they know you like it? Because there's a lot of people with a lot of money. It doesn't matter, even if they're nice people.
I couldn't imagine standing on the Senate floor for 25 hours.
And then doing some of the shit he did later.
Look, nobody's perfect, but I call to thank his staff because that was a really well-staffed. It's not technically a filibuster.
Right.
I want to move.
Did you see his ring? Do you know what that ring was? Did anybody notice the thing on his hand? That was a
We're talking
monitor.
about Senator Cory Booker.
Yeah, that was a
New Jersey.
monitor for his vitals.
The Aura ring. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Let's
did
not
exactly
plug the tech
what you,
overlords.
Yeah, but no.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Celia. I'd like to open up. Manny's going to run around with a microphone. Do we have any questions? Right here with the glasses on the left. Sorry.
Okay.
Lady.
Okay.
You got a microphone.
Is that Sue? Dr. Englander in the house.
I actually wrote up a little statement which led to a question, but I got to give it 2 lines ahead. This is all totally upside down from my whole self-concept. I grew up not in the South. I grew up in a liberal Jewish family on Long Island. Graduated high school in 1967, the year everybody first started smoking pot. Graduated from college in Ann Arbor in 1971. These days, talk about pets. My favorite thing is to look at my cat and say, Lucy, I don't think we're in Woodstock anymore. So, one other thing. You're from D.C.
Yeah.
What do you make of it? Well, I'll put that question. I'll put that question at the end.
There's a phone going on.
I timed this in a minute and a half. At age 75, I fought all my adult life to advance a recognition that there's nothing queer about same-sex attraction. I'm attracted to guys. I've never hidden that fact. And as my parents raised me, I'm proud to be simply and completely and uniquely myself. I never signed up to smash cis-heteropatriarchy on behalf of some brave new world. I've always approached being gay as a matter of personal freedom rather than social justice. In my opinion, we made a terrible mistake in pleading, I can't help it, I was born this way. Choosing one's intimate partners is just that, a matter of personal choice, of agency, of our God-given right to the pursuit of happiness. On the other hand, we're playing with fire when we start buying into Orwellian notions like behavioral health. That shoe can always end up on the other foot. In the end, the implicitly adversarial notion of queer or some putative LGBTQIA++ community is a self-marginalizing corral into which we've been herded by the apparatchiks of the groups to advance their own interests. It dilutes and jeopardizes the hard-won, widespread acceptance and self-esteem as individuals.
What's your question?
I will get to that in a moment. I will get to that in a moment. That gay people have otherwise already gained, along with our fight against those who've medicalized our condition in the past, and those promoting that paradigm, thereby provoking and emboldening our adversaries, are running a protection racket at our expense. All that said, a couple of things. I'll roll it into one. You come from D.C., you're probably familiar with Jamie Kirchick, you're probably familiar with Andrew Sullivan. Here I am, Am I a detour from history to be buried in memory hold and liquidated as somebody whose vision of life was just wasn't it? And by the way, this business of, yes, you need other people for empathy, other individuals. Then you connect. But what I don't go for, and I'm with you on the economics. We pick each other to pieces over pronouns and privilege, and meanwhile the oligarchs keep laughing all the way to the bank. So, what happens to people like me in your history, in your community?
Yeah, I wish I knew how to respond to that. I'm happy to talk after the event. I wish I honestly don't have much of an answer for you.
I would say that you represent a group of people. I mean, we are as diverse as we're diverse, and that is your reality, and that is your path, I guess. I mean, I didn't quite understand all the question, but I understood what you were saying. I would not necessarily agree with you, but I respect your opinion.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us, Sue.
So first of all, as a woman and a sister, I would ask you not to do that again. Second of all, I'm a historian, and we are surrounded by the very things that brought our movement into being. Not just Stonewall was first, but the civil rights movement, which had lots of gays and lesbians like Bayard Rustin, Barbara Jordan. They're the places where the flashpoints where change started. We don't have that now, and it's very disturbing to me. So it's not like I'm going to ask you where the movement is going to come from, but I will say, where is our starting point for this new time and generation to stand up and not just protest, but be ourselves collectively?
I talk to young people. I mean, I have a bunch of friends in their 20s because I think that's important. I have a lot of generational friends. And thank you for your question. I think that Wilson and I were at a protest. And I'm old, right? And I'm Southern. And even when I was a hippie, I dressed preppy. So I mean, I just look like this, and I've always kind of looked like this, but cuter. And
You're still cute.
Oh, thank you. We have a little love fest here. So we're there, and everybody, and then people like Wilson, and it's Richmond, and so someone that looks like you in San Francisco is okay. I mean, when I went to in the aughts, when I went to Charleston, there were like these goths, and I went up to them, and they were very gothy, and I said, I just want you to know I came from San Francisco, and in San Francisco you are a dime a dozen, but sweetie, here you are different. And they, of course, were goths, so they didn't want to, yeah. But
for those of you who don't know, Dr. Englander is one of my favorite professors of all time.
What do you teach?
And she teaches history. Yeah.
Well, oh, that's right. You said you're a history and CIMAD. That's super.
I think one of the things that I have found very, very frustrating as somebody who is politically aware, I read a lot. I have a lot of connections on a variety of levels to Washington, D.C., and I do feel somewhat disconnected from the political scene here in San Francisco. Partly, I moved here as a response to leaving that part of my life behind. But one of the things that I rage against is people who are keyboard warriors, who are just yelling and screaming, and they are doing nothing. one of the things that the Democrats, at their own peril, have neglected to do for a generation is actually cultivate people to run for office at all levels. On some level,
And they win.
but yeah, well, and this is the other thing. We have power. We are constantly told that we are not powerful because we are A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, whatever is your personal identifier, your political identifier, your, racial and ethnic identifier. We are allowing ourselves to be divided by people that aren't us so that they can separate us, so that we don't recognize that if we actually all came together, even if we don't all agree, right? Even if we don't all agree, we agree on things of core morality and values. And if we vote in a way that is better aligned with our core morality and values, and we actually get involved, run for local office, run to be on your local campaign committee, volunteer, go, I think that we really radically need to get involved. And to me, the lesbians in my life have always reminded me that, it is, we do not get to political action by accident. So.
And stay off your effing phone. I don't know why I'd clean
Unless you're making 5 calls.
Yes. Unless you're making, yes. And also, but you keep aware. Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. Mike, incoming. Thank you, Louise.
You keep aware. You just don't stay on it because it's nuts.
Thank you.
I love your glasses, by the way.
Thank you. My generation, I came to San Francisco when I was 21 in 1981-ish, sort of. I don't remember years, but that I'm just identifying where I came from. And so I was here for the separatist lesbian community that went up and down Valencia Street between 14th Street and 30th Street, and the Castro Street guys thing that was going on in Castro Street. And it really was, to me, it felt like 2 different worlds.
It was.
And we couldn't stand the way the men treated us, which was, we felt very much like second-class citizens as women identified women. Mm-hmm. It was sort of a natural, this is the way the culture was, and so and then I was aware, of course, at Cafe Flore, seeing men start looking like ghosts. Still hurts. But this was still a time of separation between the two cultures, the queer women's culture, the queer men's culture. I'll just use those terms to simplify it. And the amazing thing is that divide was breached. And I remember something, just use a really simple example. I would go to the Rawhide and I started doing country western dancing. A bunch of dykes went to the Rawhide, which was a gay men's country western bar dance place. And we felt like the guys would just shoulder us aside. There was definite quasi-hostilities almost. And so it's just an example of the separateness that would exist. And of course that changed with time. But this is a question here, which is somehow the women, the lesbians, let's call them lesbians, the lesbians and the men, the queer guys, breached that divide somehow. And it reminds me of what we talk about now, about people being on opposite sides. The Republicans versus the Democrats, the MAGA people versus the queers, whatever. So to me, I don't know how that shift happened, but that it happened is enormously promising because we were in different worlds.
Right.
And we didn't want really to understand each other's. We didn't want to understand each other's world. We didn't understand that we were shut, even, I think. So for me, I'm just throwing this out there. For me, the fact that the dykes and the faggots came together around AIDS and HIV is proof that these completely different worlds can not only contact each other, but care for each other.
Right.
So,
And I so identify with what you're talking about, and it's just as you were speaking, I'm realizing everyone was an adolescent. But we were adolescents because we'd all just come out. And now that, and I say this all the time, everyone's always go, oh yeah, you're saying something smart. And so we weren't always behaving well. We were self-centered. And, but we put that aside. We put that aside. And we're all better for it. And
it didn't just happen in harmony.
no, it wasn't pretty.
Desperate time.
Yeah.
And I frankly think that
We're in desperate times now.
leads to people finally reaching out to each other.
Right.
We were terrified. The Dykes were terrified to go to the Castro. Yeah. Well, I didn't want to eat at the Castro. Are you kidding me? I'd get AIDS. I mean, there was that much
Yeah.
ignorance about lack of knowledge about what's medical. It wasn't any animosity or anything. But
And we can thank our government for the lack of knowledge and the lack of understanding.
Yeah.
We've got time for one quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Well,
But we can-
one of these two.
We'll do
He
quick.
says he
Two.
wants me to take it.
Okay.
So,
We're gonna hang out.
I was in D.C. for 27 years. I didn't do the up here. I did Lost and Found.
I did the Lost and Found too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got arrested. Okay.
the tea dance. I spent 27 years in D.C. I had met my partner Paul Williams there. He died of AIDS just short of our 10th anniversary. I moved here, and for me, I'm 69. I lived through all that. First of all, Dan Savage said, "We dance at night so we can fight in the morning." I have health issues. I have mobility issues. What I do is creativity.
That is activism.
Yes, I draw, I sew, and what I try to do is encourage everyone is create, be creative, and let go of perfectionism. Put a mark on a piece of paper, sing your song, write your poem, because not only is it activism, it's an act of love, and that's what's going to move everything. And it's not a small deal; it's a big deal, especially with what you said was when all of the creativity and the hunger for creativity died with AIDS.
And what did they go after first in schools? Well, let's just cut all the things that allow people to process their feelings and express themselves. Let's get rid of the arts. Let's do sports and beat the shit out of each other. Yeah. I mean, sports is good too. I'm not totally against most sports ball. Yeah, I am.
I just want to, we got to wrap up. I want to thank Manny's. I don't think I mentioned this, and I meant to mention this at the top, is, Manny's was the target of a ridiculous and unfortunate anti-Semitic attack and robbery. Manny Yakutiel has created this space that I think is so important to San Francisco, that we have spaces like this where the community can come and gather and engage, and your background, your socioeconomic ability does not impede your ability. So I'm super grateful to Manny's and to Luis and the rest of the team here. And I'd like to again thank my fellow guest, Celia Brown.
Thank you. It was an honor. It really was. It's a true honor.
Thank you. This has been Aging with Pride. We'll see you next year. Thank you.
Liberty Lane Films is proud to host this annual event at Manny's, a vital community-focused meeting space and cafe in the heart of San Francisco's Mission District, where the rich tapestry of San Francisco comes together to take part in civic and political life. Liberty Lane Films is a San Francisco-based production company and brand agency redefining storytelling. We are proud to partner with community organizations and nonprofits here in San Francisco and across the nation by supporting mission-driven organizations as they create positive impact in the communities they serve. To support our work and learn more about upcoming events, podcasts, and our upcoming documentary feature film, meet me at the club, the Castro Country Club Story. Visit libertylanefilms.com. Thanks again for watching, and we hope to see you next year for Aging with Pride 2026.